It is 10:01. I think maybe give it another minute or so for people to trickle in. And then we can go ahead and get started. And I can't see any questions or if anything comes up in the chat, but hopefully David can keep an eye on that and answer any questions that come up during the slideshow. Okay, now I can see the chat. The bar just popped up. So yes, please put your questions into the chat box if something comes up when we're going through the slides here, but we are going to leave the majority of this time for answering questions. This is just going to be kind of a brief overview of what to expect with the microservice agreement funding for this second round. And then, yeah, lots of time for questions. So we can go ahead and get started here. And I'm assuming, David, you can see my slides. Is that correct? I just want to make sure before I start.
We can see your slides, Rachel.
Okay, thank you. All right. So we're just going to do a run through of kind of each section of the application and what we are looking for with these applications for the microservice agreements. But first off, hi, my name is Rachel. I work at Department of Emergency Management for Snohomish County, and I am the opioids coordinator here at the county. So David and I help facilitate the MAC group and just kind of act as a middleman between different services and government executive's office level type groups. And I'm very happy to have everyone here on the webinar today and excited that folks are interested in this second round of funding opportunity. So this is the second round. We had our first round about 7 months ago. I believe I did this same webinar the end of January. It feels like it was yesterday, but it has been about 7 months. And so David and I were able to take a lot of really good feedback from the first round of funding and hopefully apply it to the second round. And we're just excited to get more money out into the community and to these organizations, to all of you that is utilizing it in such a positive and amazing way. And also this webinar will be recorded and posted onto the Snohomish County Overdose Prevention website. So if you need to refer back to it to answer any questions you have or just refresh before applying or during your application process, you're able to do that as well. And here this is what the page will look like on overdose prevention, Snohomish County Overdose Prevention.com for funding opportunity. This is what you will see for the application. It'll be a big banner across the top, and then in our little sticker over there, the due date for the application is September 8th. So that's coming up here. Hopefully we can get questions answered today so that you have plenty of time to start or finish the application. So this round, for the second round, we have a total of $7,200, $72,200, which will fully fund 9 projects, assuming everyone applies for $7,500. That is the amount that you can apply for. And I feel like I'm forgetting something with that. So you don't have to apply for $7,500. That is just the highest amount that you can apply up to. If your project, is only going to be $5,000 or $6,000, that will be the amount that you can apply for. You just cannot go higher than $7,500. There we go. So this is just an overview of the One Washington Memorandum of Understanding. That is a mouthful. We just call it the MOU, the One Washington MOU. So this document, not the one that's pictured on the slide here, this is kind of our breakdown of it, but this legal document just shows all the approved uses for the funding, and when filling out your application, you'll see that you do have to align your project with the One Washington MOU, because that is where the money is coming from, and that's how we have to use it. But David and I created a kind of a breakdown, a guide to the One Washington MOU, so you don't have to read through 100 legal document papers. And so it's a little bit easier to read and broken down a little bit better into some plain language. The guide doesn't cover everything in the MOU, but it definitely helps break down some of the legal jargon. So like increase naloxone availability and distribution, having that in your project, providing recovery services for people in a variety of different settings and circumstances, peer support, recovery case management, all those things are listed in the MOU. It's just easier to read it on a simpler level there. And if you need any help, David and I are available through email, which I'm not sure if you already dropped it in the chat, our MAC group email that we are available through to answer any questions, anything regarding the MOU, especially because we know that it can be confusing. We've spent many times looking at it and reading through the document, so we know it pretty well. But yeah, and then in the application, it will ask for you to identify specific sections that your project is, what specific sections in the MOU that your project is pulling from. And this is the definition of recovery that we are using from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. I'll just read it aloud here. Recovery is a process of change through which individuals improve their health and wellness, live self-directed lives, and strive to reach their full potential. So that is our definition of recovery. That is a very vague definition, and most, if not all, of you guys are doing recovery work anyway in your organization. It's just about how to pull out those little bits of recovery and kind of put it into the application to make it a recovery-based project. But yes, everyone is doing this work, and you all know the definition probably a lot more than I do. So here are some examples. of funded recovery activities. This stuff is, again, all listed in the One Washington Memorandum of Understanding, but it's really nice to read it in list form here. Peer support, counseling, case management. Again, a lot of these organizations that we're working with that went through the first round were already doing these things. Things that it can fund our recovery events. So I'm sure a number of you heard of or even went to the Spring into Recovery event. So big events like that, we can, if you need help funding even just a portion of it, a mobile vet van or a dental unit, things like that. That's all stuff that this funding opportunity can help with. Only thing that it does not work for is utility bills, keeping the lights on, water, gas, garbage. And then we can't fund gift cards or stipends or things like that. But yeah, there's a wide variety of things that can fund. So hopefully you can leave more of that money for the utility bills. This funding specifically just can't go toward those. And then here we have application expectations. Really, what came out of the first round for me is we need very specific, detailed projects with a budget breakdown. You know, we are giving the money and we know that you're doing the project, but we have to see exactly basically what every dollar is going toward. We don't need receipts on that, but it's just helpful for us to look over the project with everyone reviewing them and decide where the money is going is if we know how it's being spent. We're looking for prior history of recovery programming, uh, anyone who is working at the organization that has lived experiences, any volunteers. This is all stuff that isn't a make or break, but it goes into the scoring of the applications. And then, yeah, a detailed description of how this is going to be how your project is going to be affecting and directly impacting folks in recovery. And this is our scoring guide. Kind of plain and simple, but we like to be transparent about what points are going where. And just to be clear, we require everything to be filled out, but you don't have, if you have no volunteers, you're still eligible for the funding. It just affects the scoring. Same for everything else. If you've had past projects, that's great. If you haven't, that doesn't mean you're not eligible for the money. It just means that it's going to affect the scoring a little bit. And then at the end, we have the tiebreaker, which is individuals your project will serve, and then the geographic area your project will serve. And a detailed version of the scoring guide can be found on the application as well if you wanted to look over it or refer back to it. So for reporting requirements, we wanted this to be very low barrier for the people filling out the applications and reporting back on the projects. So our follow-up questions are fairly simple. We do schedule, we're going through this now with the first round. We do schedule a mid-project check-in with all the organizations that will be receiving funding. And during that mid-project check-in, we'll basically come up with some questions that we ask about the project to see, how it's going so far, and specific questions that we put on your microservice agreement that will be your reporting requirements, but that will be a case by case and project by project thing that we're looking at. And we will work with you to come up with what questions that we ask to check in on your project and get numbers for it. But some examples are the number of participants that are being served, amount of naloxone distributed, and then that comes after the fact when we talk back and forth about what works best for your project because everyone's will be different. And then here's just a list of automatic disqualifiers. So if the work is not located in the one Washington MOU, nor evidence-based, evidence-informed, or promising practice, fails to show how the project is allowed under the MOU, does not provide information on how the funding is spent. So that's where the budget breakdown really needs to be detailed there. And then if you're not a nonprofit organization status, so if you don't have a EIN number, that we're able to look up and make sure that you are a nonprofit. But again, things like not having volunteers doesn't disqualify you, it just affects the scoring. So these are some insurance requirements. We will work with each organization if you're not able to meet a specific requirement. In the application, you're able to choose which insurance requirement you need, exceptions for, if any, and it'll be looked at on a case-by-case basis. So if you don't have auto insurance, auto liability, but you're not going to be using a vehicle at all, no transportation, then that's something that we could look at on a case-by-case basis. And again, there is more detailed description of the insurance requirements on the application itself. And this is kind of a timeline of this round of funding. So the applications are due September 8th, coming up pretty quickly. We do try and move through this as fast as we can, but we learned in the first round that it does take a little bit of time going back and forth with finance and trying to finalize all the documents and such to finally get the money out. But it does also require some attentiveness by the organization receiving funding, getting documents back to us as quick as possible. But some of it is out of our hands and out of your hands once it's in a different department, and we just have to make sure everything is checked off and good to go. The specific documents that we will need, it will be outlined on the application. Insurance and W-9 are important documents that we'll need to move forward with funding. So we have applications due September 8th. Notifications will go out beginning of October. And then the process of finalizing everything and getting all the documentation finalized can take 1 to 2 months. And then funding, oh no. Can you still hear me or see anything?
We can hear you, Rachel, but the webinar itself, the presentation has gone away.
Okay, well, it went away for me too. Let's see. Okay, sorry guys, just give me 1 second here. It just shut down on my end. Let me try and reshare here. One second. Can you see anything?
Yeah, we can see it, but we just see your notes along with it.
How about now?
Yep, that's that. There you go.
Okay. Sorry about that. Um, okay. Here. Um, I completely forgot where I was. So, timeline. Get all the documentation to us as quickly as possible. If there are any questions or things that need to be sorted out, we will work with you. And we try and be really good about communication and answering emails and getting back to you and such. So I just put in a couple examples here of projects from our first round of funding. So we have Courage to Change. Their project name was Nick's Place Supportive Recovery Housing. So this funding went toward their 18-bed recovery residency, and money helped with essential needs, transportation to and from appointments, and just toward their housing in general. And then we have the Center for Human Services, Chasing Hope, Service Navigation, and Community Engagement. So this money helped them with their drop-in recovery space for peer mentors, and then funds going toward laptops, client essential needs, and purchases of phones with service. So all things that are helping out the clients and getting basic needs taken care of with the funding. And then these are just some frequently asked questions that, or things that David and I just thought of from the last round of funding that might come up. Um, so if you did apply for the first round of funding, you are still eligible to apply for this round of funding. It just can't be for the same exact project that that the first round of funding went toward. So it has to be a new project or a continuation of that project. It just can't be, oh, we overspent at this event that we got the first round of funding for, and so now we need the second round of funding to help pay for that money we overspent. That you cannot do. And if you have any questions about if your second project qualifies or not after the first round of funding, just please let us know. And then again, I mentioned this before, if you don't have any volunteers, you're still eligible. If you don't have prior history, you're still eligible. If you don't have folks working or volunteering that have lived experience, still apply. All of these questions just go into the scoring sheet. And then for this round, after you fill out your application, David and I realized that it's really helpful that we send that filled out application back to you, because if we ask follow-up questions, you're able to refer back to that application and see what you filled out previously. And then nonprofit status, that is determined through an EIN number, and it is only one project per EIN number. And then, yeah, that is all for my portion, and hopefully people have some questions that we can answer, and hopefully David can help me out with answering questions.